Hello and welcome to Love Lighting Academy. Today we're going to talk about some terms you should be familiar with if you're looking at a lighting project or starting to figure out what you want to design. This is not an in-depth lighting fundamentals training, but rather a familiarization of some of the terms in the lighting universe. So when we talk about the lighting universe, some of these terms, lumens, foot candles, lumens per watt, color temperature, CRI. These are all terms that you're going to hear when you're looking at um, someone discussing your lighting projects. And so I thought we'd go over some of the core metrics of lighting, the fundamentals, so to speak. So we have lumens, luminous flux. Lumens is the total quantity of light emitted by a power source. Unlike, other metrics like wattage, which is more about power, lumens is about the light, and it's different than foot candles. Lumens is the amount of light that comes out of a fixture. Foot candles refers to the amount of light delivered to the work plane. And you can't get the foot candles without lumens and then luminous efficacy, the efficiency of the fixture. So efficacy measures how efficiently the light source is in this case, the light fixture perhaps is at delivering that light, the lumens that the light source generates to the work plane. Modern fixtures are typically 100 to 160 lumens per watt, which is much better than what we had only a few short years ago. Color temperature, or CCT, as you may see, correlated color temperature, it describes the color of white light measured on the Kelvin scale. So many times if you're shopping in a Home Depot, whatever, and you're just looking at LED bulbs, they may call them warm white or daylight or cool white. They're actually on this Kelvin schedule. And as you look at more expensive solutions, tubes, fixtures, you're going to get a broader and more subtle choice of ranges, 2700 anywhere to 6500, the very cool daylight looking color, which is probably used more in industrial and was being used a lot outdoor. The cool daylight type of color, it's a little more efficient. When we're warming up the colors, we lose a little of efficiency, and it was very popular, but there's a little bit of a pushback against it now where people don't want that harsh light in some outdoor environments. So we have three pillars of layered lighting. We have the ambient layer of lighting, which kind of gives you your background illumination. So, think of it for your kitchen at home. You may have some hi-hats in the ceiling, and they illuminate the lighting very, in the space overall very evenly. You wouldn't want it to be super bright like that you might need for reading fine print all the time, because it would be abrasive in the space. But this ambient layer provides that overall illumination in the space. Then we have the task layer. Think of that like perhaps your kitchen fixture, or over the table. You may have a pendant mounted fixture over the table, or a desk lamp on your desk. This is the task layer, and this gives you the brighter light you need to read or work or do something in particular. And then you have your accent layer, which might add contrast. It could highlight something, like you may have a light on a picture over your fireplace, right, that you want to really highlight. Or maybe there's a brick wall and you're trying to give it some contrast by shining a light down and showing the physical pieces of brick. So that would be your accent layer. When we look at a general rule of thumb of foot candles, and again, this is not lumens, this is foot candles, which is the measured light on a work plane. The measured light on a desk or in an office these days is probably around 40 foot candles. I remember when I started out, we were probably 50, 60 foot candles. Everybody's toned that back a bit with computers and everything we work on. You know, a lot of it was number 2 pencil back in the early days, right? And reading for accounting work. But now, you know, a good number is 40, and even less than that is acceptable in some office environments where there's task lighting and they want to have a little bit more visual contrast. Now you notice on this slide, 400 lux. So 40 foot candles or 400 lux, that's the same thing. Lux is more commonly used in Europe. In the United States, we seem to talk foot candles, but they're both the same thing. And if you have a light meter, you likely have a switch to switch between the two, lux and foot candles. And then we look at lighting quality, you know, for the applications that you may look. We talked about color rendering index. So the higher the color rendering index, the better the light renders the colors of the objects that are in there. So, you know, retail is often talked about, you know, you want to make that shirt look nicer and you know, have a high CRI, but really where it's super critical, art galleries, you know, could be healthcare, educational spaces, anywhere, you know, you want things to look better. And isn't that really everywhere? These days, we're blessed with higher CRIs in most of the products that we're using. So we really don't have to worry about reduced CRIs just to save energy. You may remember, if you're an old timer like me, when low pressure sodium was the most efficient light source, but it was a dark yellow, and they would use it, you know, for some roadway, you know, applications just to save energy. But everything was monochrome. A red car, a yellow car, a brown car, they all look the same under the light. So high color rendering, we kind of take for granted these days, as most of the sources are very high color rendering. Where might you use one color temperature over another? Well, the warmer colors, you know, 3,500 to 4,000 Kelvin, you know, that's probably the most popular colors in the commercial spectrum. Offices, seminars, classrooms, where we get into more demanding you know, applications, we may want to go to that 90 CRI. Then once we're getting into hotels, hospitality, lounges, warming it up a bit, 2,700 to 3,000 Kelvin is probably more common. It reminds us of the old incandescent downlights, the warmer colors, the colors we use in our home. And then as we get into healthcare and detailed fine work, jewelry stores, examination rooms, that's where the cooler colors, you know, are probably more prevalent. And when we look at the efficacy, this is the efficiency of the technologies that we might be using. These modern LED luminaires are north of 140 lumens per watt. Now, what does this mean to you or to us and the energy savings? Well, linear fluorescent T5, 90 lumens per watt, and that was kind of where fluorescent maxed out. Compact fluorescence, where we used to have those in our home, were 60 lumens per watt, and the old incandescent bulb, which is all we had, you know, back in the day, early on, 15 lumens per watt. So it's pretty extraordinary how quickly we have really moved up this efficacy chart. Few references here for some of the photos that were shown in today's presentation. Thanks for joining us, and I hope this gives you a good understanding and a start of some of the fundamental terms that you'll use in lighting. Thank you.